Command this top 5 dead or alive, and that's just off of one podcast. It's your boys here. We're going to talk a little something different here because we're in that dead season between the end of the last season, camp season coming up. We had draft season already. So it's time for top 5 season. We're going to talk about our top 5 personal favorite NFL players of all time. Not just talking Commanders, not talking Redskins, not just talking WFT. We're talking about all teams, all time. Top 5. Who's your favorite? Who's our favorite? We're going to talk about that next.
Spoiler alert, my list is the best.
No. Mine is. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Command This. That was your boy Phil on the intro, as always. I'm Steve, and that's Dev, looking fabulous with his Redskins necktie and his aviators. Don't sleep on the necktie. That's pretty dope.
Allen.
And the Jonathan Allen.
That looks like the jersey Marcus Davis is supposed to buy me.
There you go.
I just talked right over the damn drop.
Yeah, you ruined it. Stepped on the joke.
That's okay. Hey, tonight, like Phil said, we are doing our top 5 NFL players, favorite NFL players of all time. These aren't necessarily Redskins, football team, Commanders. These are just our top 5 favorite players. So I think we're probably going to have a very diversified list because we all have different taste in players. And before we go into it, like Dev, when you picked your list, like what stood out? Like, why did you pick some of the players you picked without giving it away? Like, was it personality? Was it how they did on the field? Is it synonymous with being the best?
It's not really synonymous with being the best, even though I think I picked players that are probably the best in their era. But I look for guys who made me want to watch football, who are not only great players but also great entertainers. So
entertainment was a factor for you.
Yeah, man. I want to see some guys, I want to see some dancing. I want to see some touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? I want to see some celebrations. You know what I'm saying? I like that kind of stuff, man. I want to see some pizzazz. You know what I'm saying? Some moxie.
Icky Shuffle.
I like those kind of players, man. That made me as a kid want to watch football when the Super Bowl Shuffle came on. That was fun, man. When I seen the Redskins jump in the air and all high five each other, that was fun, man. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that.
This
cool.
Dude, Taylor Heineke's in his top 5. I'm calling it because he said moxie.
Man,
he said that word.
Hey, I can. Spoiler alert: there are no moxie players on my list.
You said moxie.
I'm just saying.
You said moxie, not me.
I did. I'm sorry. I misspoke. There are no moxie.
So there's a bunch of undersized white slot receivers on your list.
There are not a bunch of undersized white
Les
receivers.
Welker and Julian Edelman.
There honestly may not be.
Dev's list already.
I may not have anyone that is pigmentally challenged on my list. Now that I think about it, this racist moment was brought to you by Command This.
We need that. The more you know drop.
I can fly twice as high as the sun.
All right. So
the more you know.
What about you? What about you, Phil? What kind of things were you looking for?
Because I'm a loudmouth. If you all don't know already, I'm a loudmouth. I talk, I yell, I scream, and I look at my list and I was like, none of these guys are known for that. These are all the dudes who are known for it's the putting in work guys, and they excel. They all excelled at their position. I didn't have some bum who just worked really hard and never accomplished anything. These are all guys who accomplished things. But I looked at my list after I was done. I was like, damn, none of these guys were like big off the field personalities. Like their personalities were all their play. Yeah. And that's what made them great. And I don't know why, but I think because as it is, I'm not athletically gifted. Like I'm not a natural athlete. Everything I've ever accomplished came from work, came from practice, came from perfecting the craft as best as I could.
Mhm.
So
I
you're
think
saying you have moxie. That's what you're saying.
not Moxie, but no, because Moxie is
Sounds like it's exactly what you say you
no
have.
work ethic.
I'm just saying,
Work
do you perhaps
ethic.
not like Taylor Heineke because you are, in fact, Taylor Heineke?
No, because Taylor Heineke does dumb shit. I'm talking about guys who didn't do dumb shit. Taylor Heineke is loved because he does dumb shit and gets away with it. That's really what it all boils down to. These are all guys who didn't do dumb things. These are all guys. There's Hall of Famers on my list. There's guys, in fact, of my list, only one is not in the Hall of Fame.
Huh. I think all mine are not.
Which means they're probably high quality people. I think.
Yeah, and I think I've always
Fame.
looked up to high quality people. I guess because I was raised by high quality people. And maybe that's it. As a kid, my father is one of those people that, like, when you finally drag it out of him, you realize that, man, this guy's lived a hell of a life and done a hell of a lot of things, but he's so low key about it because it's just another day.
Yeah,
day at the office.
that's
Like,
fair.
my father was a DC fireman for 29 years, right? You talk to any firemen out here, former retired firemen, they've got stories for days, and they'll tell you without being prompted. Him, you got basically beat it out of him. There's stories I heard from him. I didn't get hear it until my 30s. I'm like, when did that happen? And you hear like, why have I never heard this before? So I think that's just, the qualities you look up to as a kid that kind of carry over to who you up to as outside of the family. You look up to athletes and so forth. That's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. My list was, I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just looking for guys that just made me take me to a place in my life, mostly as a young child, teenager, where it just made me fall in love with the game of football. And like you said, Phil, these are kind of quality guys on my list. I've been toying with having one other guy on here, and maybe when we're done, we can do like name one honorable mention, and I'll name that guy. But without any further ado, can I kick it? All right. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right. Let's start number 5.
We'll
just go from there. So, Dev, who do you have for your number 5 top player of all time?
Sweetness, Walter Payton, man.
Walter Payton.
Funny story. One of my best friends from childhood, Corey Johnson. Shout out CJ. We as kids, we both wrote our favorite football teams. I wrote the Redskins. He wrote the Chicago Bears. So a couple of weeks go by, man, and I look at the mailbox and I got a big envelope with some stickers and some football cards and a map of RK Stadium. It was pretty fucking cool as a kid. And he didn't get shit. I was like, I got it. I was bragging. A couple of days go by and he gets an envelope and it's an autographed picture of Walter Payton. Now, we're like 12 and I'm still like, you got some funky ass picture. I was still clowning him. Fast forward, like now we're 40-something years old. I'm like, oh my God, this dude has an autographed Walter Payton picture hanging in his den. And it's crazy now that we look at it. But at the time, I still thought I won. I got an Art Monk, like 1,000 receiving yards, a golden card. It was pretty dope. I have none of those by now, at this point. So
I have an Art Monk 1,000-yard receiving club card in my possession.
Damn. My crackhead aunt stole mine, bro. No lie. Rest in peace, by the way. I didn't have anything to do with that, but yeah. Notice I'm telling the story. But yeah, definitely she passed away not long ago. Well, a long time ago, actually, but not long after that.
All right, Phil. How about you?
Well, mine is my sole non-Hall of Famer on the list. It's not why he's number 5, but I literally, in my 8th grade yearbook, graduating from Catholic school, the 1 year I went to Catholic school, I put down, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to play. They weren't gonna let me put that in
Was
there.
it River Phoenix? Is that his
Trent
name?
Phoenix.
But
I knew what it was.
I put down I wanted to play defensive end for the Washington Redskins. And that's an indicator of who one of the guys I look up to most, one of my favorite football players of all time. It's Charles Mann.
Charles Mann.
Charles Mann was
Quality,
dope.
quality man.
Yeah.
Quality dude. I always thought that, now he's a guy who was athletically gifted. I mean, he was 6'6", 270, and could play the run and the pass equally as well. Big, strong, bigger than your average defensive end. Most of your defensive ends these days, they run that height, but they're about 250, 260. A little bigger. He's about 270. But he was trimmed too. If you ever look at Charles Mann, there wasn't an ounce of fat on the dude. Like,
Right.
you can tell that guy worked. And because of that, and just because of the fact that Dexter Manley was the star, right? But when I started to really kind of become more cognizant of the teams and everything else, Manley was at the tail end of his career, and then he left to go to Phoenix. But Charles Mann was still there. And he was the star on the defensive line. He was the guy he was the only one who never took plays off. They'd rotate in 7 defensive linemen on a 4-man front. He was the only one who didn't leave the field. So that always stuck with me. It's like, no matter who's in there, Charles Mann's in there. And somebody who, plays every down like that, no matter the situation. Yeah, that always stuck with me. And I always, when I was a kid, when I realized that, you're never going to be a wide receiver, never going to be a quarterback. You're going, let's go out here and beat Charles Mann then.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool, man.
Chucky Mann.
All right. My number 5, and this takes me back to maybe 2006. Not in the Hall of Fame. Hurricane Katrina hit. I was in Iraq at the time, and we were rolling in 2007, and the Super Bowl came, and it was the Saints. And what New Orleans had just been through, and then we find the first time we had an inkling of a good time was when the Super Bowl came, and we got to have one beer they gave us over in Iraq. And I watched Drew Brees play. And from that point forward, I kind of became enamored with Drew Brees subconsciously, just as a man, as a quarterback. I've always liked his body of work. Drew Christopher Brees, his 2nd round pick, 80,000 yards, 501 touchdowns. So yeah, Drew Brees is my number 5 favorite player of all time. 6 foot, 210 pounds on the smaller side. Went through that whole debacle with him and Philip Rivers. Him and Philip Rivers getting traded.
I like Philip Rivers, by the way.
Drew Brees had that shoulder surgery. The Chargers traded him and acquired Philip Rivers, and he just produced. And the one time I didn't like Drew Brees is when he broke the passing record against us, Washington at the time, and he made a big spectacle of it. But outside of that, and I know that pissed Phil off pretty bad too. That's why I thought Phil might not like this pick from that moment. But yeah, Drew Brees is my number 5.
Steve said before the podcast started, I got one here that's going to piss Phil off.
Yeah.
You nailed it. I cannot stand Drew Brees. I can't stand his umpteen little kids.
You remember that? Remember whenever he extra celebrated when he got that record against.
He got that passing record,
Yeah.
and they stopped the game for 40 minutes.
Outside of that moment, though, you still don't like him?
No, just never have. Like, here's the thing: when he was with the Chargers, I did like him.
Yeah.
A part of it is I've never been a Saints fan.
Oh no, I like the fact that he has a Mr. Hanky kiss on his face. That's really fucking cool.
He's got a scar. I love his breakdown.
I thought it was
like his breakdown before the game is one of the best.
Nothing less. I think it's about time we showed ourselves what kind of a team we got. If we believe we can't be beat, and there's always something to prove. We always play to win. 1, 2, 3, 4, win, 5, 6, win, 9, who's that? One, win on 3, 1, 2, 3, win. Come on now.
I used to have it memorized what it was, where he does the hype chant and he breaks down the game in the huddle.
That's not a tattoo of Mr. Hanky on his face.
No, it looks like it, but it's not.
No, but the thing is that like
Damn it.
I've of all the teams we're talking about top 5 we love, I've never really like the only time I ever cared about the Saints, and I still like seeing them lose most of the time, but the only time I was really like, okay, the Saints are pretty cool was the Dome Patrol. Outside of the Dome Patrol, never really cared for the Saints.
That's fair.
Oh, Saints are a pretty cool team.
Never been a fan. Never been
Yeah.
a fan. Like I always like seeing them get stomped by the 49ers and everybody else. I don't know why. Just
if you were not a Washington fan,
maybe it's the pukey color scheme of their uniforms. I don't know.
if you were not a Redskins or Washington fan, what team would you follow?
I'd probably be a Chiefs fan, and that
Chiefs.
dates back to like 1992 with like Steve DeBerg at quarterback.
I like Steve DeBerg, Okoye Ward, all those guys.
Okoye, all those guys.
Yeah,
I like them too. Stephon Page.
Chiefs had nothing to do with Mahomes, but it's all Montana.
Yeah, I've always
Marcus Allen, Tony Gonzalez, and Okoye.
Marcus Allen's kind of, I don't want to say overrated because he did us pretty dirty in the Super Bowl. But I don't know. I looked at his yards compared to other guys that got in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, Marcus Allen got in. It's kind of a weird.
You gotta look at.
It's like a Yao Ming kind of feel. It's like I remember he was dope as fuck, man. But really,
it's
like,
because he was never great at one thing, but he was really good at a lot of things. Like he was a good pass receiver. He was a good short yardage back for a guy his size.
I'll give you an example. Like, what if Clinton Portis got a Super Bowl? What if he just got one in Denver or some shit before he came here? Would Clinton Portis be in the Hall of Fame?
He would probably be given a stronger case. I think if he had played one or two more years at the level he played at his best, yeah, he would.
You take off the Super Bowl Marcus Allen's career. Is Marcus Allen's career better than Clinton Portis'?
I have to compare the stats. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yes, because Marcus Allen was an infinitely better pass receiver.
I think he's better. I'm not saying that Clinton was better. I'm just wondering, like, because Hall of Famers, you're grasping at straws. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the time.
Marcus Allen was an infinitely better pass receiver.
He definitely was more memorable.
You got to think too. Marcus Allen would have to give away his RB1 spot to Bo Jackson for multiple years too.
That weighs into it though. How many players are behind the Hall of Famer though that probably would have made the Hall of Fame if they weren't? You know.
Yep. All right, Dev. Let's go to your number 4.
All right, number 4. Where's my phone come back on? Ed Reed. I don't know where I got to look. Ed Reed's my number 4.
Reed.
Which perhaps the greatest safety that ever lived in the face of the earth, in my opinion. And just to think, at one point in time, Sean Taylor was better than this guy. At one point, like that's crazy to think of what could have been. Rest in peace, your boy Sean Taylor, man. But I'm going with Ed Reed, one of the dopest players that has ever played in the NFL, man. He was a sight. He was a guy, man, that I really enjoyed watching play, and I wish he had played on our team.
Agreed. You know, I think Tom Brady said when they asked him who's the one player you feared the most, it was Ed Reed on the field.
I want to be Ed Reed when I was in
University of Miami alum. Ed Reed.
I would not say he's the greatest safety of all time, but we'll talk about that later.
Greatest safety of all time.
All time.
You got Palomalu, Ronnie Lott.
Guys, Ronnie Lott was a close one, man. I mean, before Ed Reed, I would have went without Ronnie Lott, man.
Yeah.
Ed Reed plays in any era. Ed Reed plays in any era, man. At free safety, any era.
All right, Phil, who you got? Number 4.
Number 4 for me. This guy had one of the most inspirational stories ever for an NFL player, period. How he got to where he was. And they made a movie of it. Kurt Warner. I'll tell you, I loved The Greatest Show on Turf when he was running it.
Hey, give me that thing, dog.
The fact that this is a guy, I've always had a soft spot for Kurt Warner. I cheered so hard for him when Arizona went to the Super Bowl with him. I wanted him to get that ring so bad. First of all, because I just wanted to see the Steelers lose, but because everybody expected them to lose, everybody expected them to win, and everybody knocks Kurt Warner. I know that part of it may be the whole devout Christian thing or whatever, but this is a guy who was supposed to have no career, and he had 2 careers. Because he was a star with the Rams, went to the Giants, gave up his starting spot when the Giants were still competitive. They still had shots at the playoffs. And he said, you got to give the kid time. And the kid was Eli Manning. You got to give the kid some reps if he's going to take over. So he willingly gave up his spot so that Eli Manning could develop into the mildly above average quarterback he became.
Mr. Poop Face.
And then he goes to Arizona to be a backup, takes over the starting spot, leads them to the Super Bowl with a fantastic passing attack. I cannot you can't look at Kurt Warner and be like, damn, this guy was nothing short of amazing. I will always big up Kurt Warner. I remember there was an argument, should he be in the Hall of Fame? Like, absolutely. This guy was throwing the ball in ways just he was the forerunner, the immediate forerunner, right before the passing explosion happened. He was the guy putting up those numbers. His numbers stand up today.
Yeah.
And 24 years ago, people can't touch his numbers from then.
By the way, if you haven't, like Phil said earlier, Kurt Warner, when he was on the Rams, the greatest show on turf, coached by Mike Martz, running the Eric Coryell offense. And if you haven't checked it out, please go check out. Put the this up this direction. Put the card. Go check out last week's episode, comparing the Eric Coryell to the West Coast offense.
And as I pointed out to Steve, he didn't know this when he was doing his podcast, but Mr. Historian over here, I pointed out Mike Martz, quarterback coach for the Redskins through 98, went to St. Louis to become offensive coordinator because Norv was OC here. Went to St. Louis. That's why Trent Green actually decided to go sign with the Rams instead of staying in Washington. He was going to stay in Washington. We would have never had Brad Johnson. But because he left and the Rams needed a quarterback, Martz wanted Green because Green knew the offense and had done really well the year before, like just developing as a quarterback.
Yep. My number 4 is none other than Vincent Bo Edward Jackson.
Oh, shit.
If you knew Bo Jackson, we just kind of talked about him. Auburn, dual sport, played for the Royals, played for the Raiders. One of my favorite players growing up. I had his shoe. I think he had the original Air Raids, if I'm not mistaken, from Nike. Bo knows there was a whole commercial line with Bo Diddley and Bo Jackson, and just watching Bo play on the field, the NFL field, it was something else, and he went from the Royals to the White Sox on baseball, but for football, I feel he was just so dominant, and he just encountered that life-changing hip injury. I forget exactly what it was. I think he tore his hip or his hip completely out of socket, but it was against the Bengals. I remember the play. It was the year
Kevin Walker.
Was it the year we went to the Super Bowl? The year after?
It was the year before.
Year before against the Bengals. And he only played football for 4 years, which is crazy. And he didn't have a whole ton of yards because he was splitting time with Marcus Allen. It was almost like a 50-50 split.
And he played part-time, too.
I wonder what his yards in Marcus Allen's yards side by side look like.
We'd have to look at him. So his first year, he got 554. Second year, 580. Third year, 950. Fourth year, 698. But check out these averages. He averages 7 yards a carry in 87, 4.3 in 88, 5.5 in 89, 5.6 in 1990.
And then also look at games played.
Yeah. 7, 10, 11, and 10. So he was just, I had posters of him on my wall. It was just, he's my number 4. Dev, on to you for number 3.
Number 3, Randall Cunningham. Yeah, I'm a big Randall Cunningham fan. Man, I used to play with him on Tecmo and used to clean house with him.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Keith Byers and Keith Jackson.
41.
Yeah,
41.
yeah. Mike Quick. Those guys, man, they were pretty dope to play with. And the deacon of defensive cell, White.
Clyde Simmons and Reggie White.
Yeah, and Seth Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough, man.
A good team.
Yeah, that was tough. But definitely I'm going Randall Cunningham.
He was on my list, Dev. He changed the game. He revolutionized the game. He was the reason we have
Lamar
the
Jackson's,
Mike Vicks.
Mike Vicks.
The reason we have Lamar Jackson. He's the reason we have the athletic quarterback. And Randall doesn't get the credit he deserves in a lot of circles. You know, and us being Washington fans, I think we all respect the hell out of Randall Cunningham.
And he did it keeping his swag the whole time. And when he went to his best years were with the Vikings, where I think he should have won MVP. I can't remember.
I will say his throwing motion was atrocious. He threw it like a baseball.
Yeah.
But he was so fun to watch. That's a good pull.
Stupid
Randall Cunningham. He was on my list at first, but when I shuffled things around, he didn't make it. But all right, Phil, number 3. What you got?
My number 3 is to me the greatest running back to ever play the game, and that's Barry Sanders.
Yeah, he on my list too.
Barry Sanders. I don't know what else I could say. I mean, there are guys who put up greater career numbers because they played longer or they had better offensive lines in front of them. But Barry Sanders played behind an offensive line that was meant for pass blocking because for the bulk of his career, he played in a run and shoot offense.
Yeah.
It was 5 linemen and a tight end. There was no fullback.
Yep.
And they threw the ball a lot, 3 wide all the time.
Just thinking college, you shared time with Thurman Thomas, bro.
In the same college backfield. Yep.
Yeah.
Here's the other crazy thing.
Was he an Oklahoma guy?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Hey, he was thought of as a lesser back, too. He was thought of as a lesser back.
Man.
Even though they both were terrific, so it's not really a knock, I guess.
Yeah, but Barry Sanders, here's the interesting thing. You look at what he put up, amazing stats.
Amazing.
And then you look at the offense he was playing in, which was not catered to him. You got to think, he was out there rushing for 13, 15, 1,700 yards, 2,000 yards one season on a team where they had the first pair of receivers to catch over 100 balls each.
Insanity.
With Brett Perryman and Herman Moore.
Yeah,
so if you think about how that offense was not catered to the run, and he put up those kinds of numbers, and he just torched people. Yeah, he was the master of running 50 yards for a 2-yard gain, and doing a lot of nothing, and an explosion. But that was the thing about Barry. He could take off at any given moment. You never felt totally comfortable because you knew at some point he could take it all the way. All you needed was that one touch and that one sliver of light, and he's gone. And one of my favorite highlights in the history of the NFL is Barry in the NFC 91 NFC divisional game against Dallas, where Detroit stomps the Cowboys, who won the year we won the Super Bowl, and the next year Dallas won the Super Bowl. Dallas is a Super Bowl caliber team out there. And Barry takes off, he runs right, he stops, he takes 2 steps back while leaning forward, and then takes off again. And Tony Casillas thinks the play's over or something. Barry runs behind his back, and Casillas is all by himself looking around. Like, where'd he go? It's one of the funniest things I ever see, partially because it happened to the Cowboys. But if you ever see that highlight, it's an amazing little run. And he had probably even more impressive runs. The one where he literally got tackled in the backfield against the Bills. I think that was in 91 too, where Cornelius Bennett, by the way, one of the best pure tacklers in the game, wraps Barry up, spins to pull him to the ground, and he goes to throw Barry down, and Barry puts his hand in the ground and keeps his balance, stands back up, and gets to the line of scrimmage for no gain when it should have been about a 5-yard loss. That doesn't sound impressive, but I can't describe the visual well enough to explain.
Talking about the towel shake where he ran behind him, then ran back around the other side of him, turned him all the way around.
No. There's plenty of those too. I know which one you're talking about.
That's the best move ever.
But the one where he gets tackled and any other running back is down in any era when you get wrapped up like that, but not Barry Sanders. Like, I've never seen anybody who like I said, at any given moment, even when you think you've got him bottled up. I watched him get hit by Darrell Green and Danny Copeland and spin move both of them off of him. All right. When does that happen?
Yeah.
Those are two guys who could hit.
There hasn't been anyone since to do that.
No.
If you think about it, no one's ever been able to duplicate that.
Not before. I thought Saquon might be that guy. He hasn't been.
Yeah. Nope. Okay, number 3. My number 3 is none other than Warren Moon. Warren Moon's my number 3. He played from 84 to 2000 for 4 teams. Most of his time was done in Houston, played for the Vikings, played a couple
too.
Seattle and Kansas City, not counting the the USFL time, but he threw for 49,000 yards, 291 touchdowns, 233. He played for the Edmonton Eskimos, the Canadian Football League from 78 to 83. So my man played from 78 to 2000, 22 years of football he played. And I feel like Warren Moon was one of the first guys he kind of paved the way for the African-American quarterback. He was breaking barriers down at a time when, in the mid 80s, there wasn't a lot of African-American quarterbacks, being successful. And I think he broke down those barriers and paved the way. And he's in the Hall of Fame for
I think he's the only one, right? The only black quarterback in the Hall of Fame? He definitely was the first.
I mean,
he's the only one.
He probably is. Now, in today's batch of players, I'm sure there's going to be plenty more, but I believe
he's going to be our 3 playing right now.
Yeah. But he was throwing, back then, we talked about this in the last video, there wasn't a lot of 4,000-yard passers, but he threw for 4,000 yards, 4 times in his career when no one threw for 4,000 yards back then. Yeah. And so,
it was
a running league.
He was the first quarterback to ever throw 600 times in a season.
Craziness. Yes, he did it in 1995.
Minnesota
Vikings. I think he did it.
He had
400 completions.
Still played 20-something
years of football. 1991.
Yeah. Him and was Randy Moss on the team at the time in 95?
No.
Moss.
He was throwing to Chris Carter still then in 95.
Chris Carter and Jake Reed.
Yeah. So, Warren Moon, my number 3. Dave, let's kick it over to you for number 2.
My number 2 guy is Darrell Green.
My
opinion, the greatest Redskin player of all time, in my opinion. Definitely the reason in high school I wanted to play corner, even though they put me at safety. I did get to do punt returns, but it definitely was a big influence in my reason of wanting to really liking football. So I'm going Darrell Green.
Darrell Green. Yep. Stalwart. Love Darrell Green. I think he's one of lots of people's favorite Redskins.
The best, fastest player in the league ever.
Right.
I ain't saying he's the fastest ever, but he's the best. He's the best one that's fast ever.
Yep. Phil, number 2.
Number 2 is, to me, still the greatest quarterback of all time. Personally.
Tom Brady.
No. Joe Montana.
Yeah.
I like Joe Montana. I can't claim.
Joe Montana. No one has run the West Coast offense with that level of precision.
Steve Young, man.
Nah. Steve Young benefited from watching Joe, but Steve Young had a lot of the same talent Joe had. Didn't win 4 Super Bowls.
Nope.
Joe Montana comes back from having his elbow just completely fall apart on him.
Mahomes in the West Coast offense, by the way.
Made took the Chiefs to the playoffs twice on creaky legs and a bad shoulder and a bad elbow. Still did it 2 years in a row. Took him to the AFC Championship one time. Always liked Joe Montana. I would just he approached the game. He was one of those dudes. It seems like if you ever look at video from back in the day, because apparently the 49ers team did a better job of getting candid film than any other team in the league in the 80s, but those guys just loved Joe Montana. They all loved playing for Joe. Joe was just one of the guys, but they respected him as a leader too. But he has an underrated arm because he can throw it deep, just like any other quarterback in the league. It was no worse than the others. So a lot of people think he had a weak arm because he played in the West Coast offense, but his accuracy was pinpoint. He could really fire it in there. Like those short passes came out quick, and he made that offense work. He was a mobile quarterback for first half of his career, and he was just a winner. Dude just won, period. And I couldn't say enough about Joe Montana.
Agreed.
Couldn't say enough.
Did it in Kansas City.
He played four Super Bowls, had 11 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yep.
And executed the greatest 2-minute drill ever. Although it's 3:10 was left in the game, but still.
Is this the one where he completed the touchdown to Dwight Clark?
No. Super Bowl 23 against the Bengals.
Boomer.
92 yards and 11 plays in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Took them right down the field because they had a shit kick return and he got called for holding, so they started on the 8 and they were down 3 and he throws that touchdown to John Taylor. Taylor was also the third read on the play, and he hit Taylor just slanting into the end zone. Which is kind of tells you that too, because that was the one Super Bowl he didn't win the MVP because Jerry Rice got it, but John Taylor caught the game-winning touchdown pass.
Okay,
most quarterbacks are looking for the A1 on that play.
Yeah,
but and it was just the way he did it. He never was trying to go for the bomb. It was pick. He was just finding just picking them apart.
Yep,
surgical, and I think that's the best way to describe it. Dude was like a surgeon. He was that precise.
So my number 2 is none other than the Nigerian Nightmare, Christian Okoye.
I think you picked him just for Tecmo Bowl, man. That's the only reason.
Christian Okoye was such a memory of my childhood. I modeled being a running back off of him. I had the same neck brace as him. I loved everything about Christian Okoye. I'm telling you, he was the reason the Chiefs became my alternative team back in the day. But when I was a Redskins fan, not because of Joe Montana. Of course, Joe Montana moving over was helpful, but I was obsessed with Christian Okoye. He played 79 games, 4,900 yards, 40 touchdowns. He was just a battering ram. He only played 5 years in the NFL. Excuse me, 6 years. Isn't that crazy? His best year was 1,480 yards, 12 touchdowns. That's it. He played for 5 years. Insane. And that was it. The dude was just a monster.
Can't play his style and play forever.
I mean, he literally took the ball in the breadbasket with 2 hands and just ran forward and just ran over people. The dude was 6'1", 253 pounds. He was a linebacker playing running back, and he had the face mask that went single bar down, 2 across down. Like running backs used to have the open face mask, not him. He had the single one going down with going across. So
yeah, it was one of only a few that had that. Thurman Thomas had that.
Yeah, Thurman Thomas also did have it. Yes, he did.
When he could find it.
Don Warren had it. Don Warren had it. Terry Orr had it. Our tight ends and the Redskins used to run that same face mask as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Christian Okoye is my number 2.
As a Redskins fan, I had to make the helmet joke about Thurman Thomas because that's just part of history right there.
Yeah. 4 times.
It's the Super Bowl and you forgot your helmet?
He sure did. All right, now we are in our number.
Somebody stole that helmet, bro. It wasn't done.
No, they moved it. The equipment guy moved it.
We are in our number 1 picks across the board. So, Dev, who is your number 1 favorite player?
Prime, Deion Sanders.
Deion Sanders.
Yeah, so that's why I said he was kind of a Redskin, but he wasn't. We don't think of him as that. I think of him as an Atlanta Falcon. I'll never consider him as a Cowboy fan. As a Cowboy, my life, personal reasons. But definitely prime Deion Sanders is, my opinion, one of the greatest football players individually that's ever played in the history of games. He is also probably the greatest athlete that ever played in the NFL. One of them, for sure. He redefined what it is to be a sports entertainer and an athlete. He played for most of the time. He was he wasn't really he was a clean athlete. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, still doesn't. He's also looks to be looking like an excellent coach, at least on the at Jackson State. We'll see what he does at Colorado. But you know what I'm saying? I'm going with Prime, man, and I hope he gets to feeling better. He might have his foot amputated or some shit.
Yeah, straight up.
But
shout out to Prime.
Gets going well, man.
Yeah, he definitely was the first of his kind with the on-field flashiness of locking down quarterbacks. Right. Or excuse me, lockdown cornerbacks.
Right.
And he was, you know, he had what was his dance called? I forget what it was called, but when he was in Atlanta, he had MC Hammer on his side.
Oh man,
he had a
platinum record. He had a platinum record, bro.
Remember when then the Redskins just destroyed him that year that Hammer came to town, and I mean, that was the 91 season, 91-92 season, wasn't it? Where we just
remember him and Andre Rison got that fight when he played for San Fran. Yeah,
man, and remember he did play for the Redskins as well.
He also played for that's what I said. He's not a Redskin, but he was there, man. He retired here. Well, I think he went to the Ravens afterwards.
Yeah, he did. But
okay. Hey, also he played for the Braves and the Royals. The Royals.
Full sport. Him and Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Phil, who is
Brian Jordan,
your number one favorite player?
I want to guess it. I want to guess it.
I'm waiting for you. Go for it.
Hold on. We play offense or defense?
I'm not telling you that.
Come on, you gotta give me that much. All right. I'm going Mike Singletary.
Wrong.
I'm gonna say Joe Jacoby.
Wrong.
One more shot.
You're closer.
Lawrence Taylor.
Wrong.
Damn, Lawrence Taylor ain't come up.
My number one is when my homerism comes into play.
Jim Lachey.
Art Monk.
It's fair.
I like Art Monk too. I ain't gonna front.
One of the you gotta understand is outside of the standard words you learn as a kid, one of the first names I knew of any public figure in this world was Art Monk. First of all, it's 2 syllables. It's easy for a toddler to realize, but Art Monk. The one regret I have is I didn't get to attend his football camp when I was a kid. That's one of my big regrets. I never got to attend his football camp. And I know people who did. But Art Monk, to me, personified everything that you want in a football player. All right. He changed positions when he came to the NFL. He was a college running back. All right. He defines possession receiver. He was 6'3", 215, big body receiver. Receivers weren't necessarily that big for the most part. I mean, you had your guys like, your Harold Carmichaels, guys like that. But generally speaking, you didn't have a lot of big body receivers like that. Earlier in his career, could go deep. Later in his career, he gave up that role to Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders, and he was running a lot of the first down routes. But he did it well, and you just didn't see Art Monk drop passes. He had some of the surest hands you've ever seen. If he dropped the pass, it was contested. Somebody was in there. He didn't just drop it.
She said.
Pause. But nonetheless, yeah, Art Monk was my favorite player as a kid. I celebrated when he got put in the Hall of Fame because I remember for so long he would get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and I hate Peter King to this day because he was the guy who was the ringleader for the writers who would not vote for him.
Man, he was like the greatest receiver that ever lived when he retired. He had the stats to be the greatest
receiver. He had
more touchdowns and more yards than everyone that ever played in the history of receiver. When
he also held the record until Rice broke it for most consecutive games with at least one catch.
Yep.
Monk, we see what hurt Monk was the fact that all these records got broken right after he retired.
Rice is the greatest receiver ever lived, Dan. But when Art Monk retired, he was the most heralded, I guess, or celebrated receiver that ever played. Accomplished would probably be the word you use. And he had like 3 chips. He had 3 chips on top of it. 3 chips, bro.
But
the
they all
same
wanted to
team
say,
with 3
well,
different fucking quarterbacks, bro. Who does that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say that when you got Steve Young and Montana. None of Art Monk's quarterbacks made the Hall of Fame, man. None of them.
Monk also had 1,000-yard receiving seasons.
Yeah.
He had one. He had 1,000-yard receiving season with Joe Theismann, with Jay Schrader, and with Mark Rippon.
Yep.
3 different quarterbacks got 1,000-yard seasons out of him.
That's crazy talk, man. He should have been first ballot, bro. That's one of the biggest flubs in the Hall of Fame history, man. He had to wait that long.
Almost a decade for him to get in. But you know what?
Bro.
Do you know what record he holds still?
Most receptions in a season?
No.
No,
that got broken.
That's gone a long time ago. Yeah, they got breaks that every year.
Longest standing ovation in the history of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, because everyone knew that there's no way he should have been in the Hall of Fame.
And that's proof that sometimes sports writers really do get it wrong with their biases.
He must have knocked down somebody's wife.
You know, if it was someone else, I might say that, but you don't even think Art Monk would do that.
You would think he wouldn't, but you never know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, maybe Peter King's wife was
the devil's greatest trick.
Was a fan of that gorgeous stash he always had.
Right, he did have.
Art Monk, by the way, had probably the most immaculate mustache in the history of mankind.
He looked like a TV cop buddy, like a Danny Glover or some shit. You know what I'm saying? He looked like Stanley on The Office. Shout out to Stanley.
All right, my number 1. I'm not going to belabor it.
I'm gonna guess it. Joe Montana.
It was Joe Montana, but I changed it. When I my first cut, Dev, Joe Montana was number 1. But then I realized I didn't have any Redskins on the list, so I'll put it back in your court.
Sammy Ball.
No. It was
Troy Apke.
No.
RG3.
No. I mean he's one of my favorite Redskins of all time. No, it's Darrell Green. Darrell Green. Yeah, it was Joe Montana. When I did this list the first time this morning, Joe Montana was up there. And then I realized, you know what? I racked and stacked. I love Joe Montana. He wasn't my favorite player. I just liked him for the same reasons you said, Phil. But then I realized, you know what? Darrell Green was probably one of my favorite players of all time. He was so humble. You know, he just showed up. He went to work. He wasn't flashy. And even till the day he retired, he was still one of the fastest men.
Hold on, man. Did Joe Montana pose in Playgirl or some shit?
Joe Montana? No. Are you thinking of like Joe Namath?
Didn't he do something?
Namath did that.
Didn't he do something like he was always in commercials and shit?
He was, and Joe Namath was like getting drunk before games, and
he was like,
that was Joe Namath.
Yeah, Joe Namath. You're thinking of Broadway Joe, not Joe Cool.
Yeah,
I think Joe Cool. Broadway Joe was trying to grab him by the pussy, I guess.
And I put this out on Twitter, so I'm just going to go over a couple other lists that people submitted. So George Carmi, our boy George, commanding the mic, he said Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders, Tom Brady, Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor. It's a solid list.
Reggie White's a good one. I'm surprised he didn't come on.
What Gibbs fantasy football? Brady, Rice, Lawrence Taylor, Jim Brown, and Reggie White. Very solid. He also Deucelicious said Sammy Ball, Sonny Jurgensen, Jerry Smith, Night Train Lane, and Tom Brady. Yeah, my boy Yam in Japan. This is going from 5 to 1 because he's the only one that numbered him. Shannon Sharp at 5, Barry Sanders at 4, Jerry Rice at 3, Dan Marine at 2, and Darrell Green at number 1. So that's kind of what the community was saying about the same thing. Although when I asked it, I said top 5 NFL, not top 5 favorite. So I don't know if that would have changed the perception of people. But before we close this out, give me one person who was in your honorable mention that you were like, should I put him in? Should I not put him in? Dev, let's start with you. Do you have one honorable mention who was close to making this list but still deserves some recognition for you?
Lawrence Taylor would be the one. I'm kind of surprised no one picked him. Lawrence Taylor would probably be it.
That's fair. Solid player, man. One of the best defensive edge rushers of all time. Right. How about you, Phil?
Ronnie Lott.
Mr. 49er, Mr. Raider. Am I seeing another team? Is another team in there somewhere?
Still not better than
These are the Jets
Jets.
for a minute.
Jets.
Yeah. You cannot grow up in our generation and not know Ronnie Lott.
Big
Dude literally
42.
had them amputate part of his finger so he could go back into a game.
He did.
I like Atwater too, by the way.
Steve Atwater.
That's another one that I thought about. When I went through the first cut of this list and I had it down to like 20, there was a couple Broncos on there, and I think it's because they were always in Super Bowl back then, losing.
Yeah,
but like Elway was considered. Shannon Sharp was another one I considered as well. But the last cut was Ronnie Lott.
I think I like Shannon Sharp more now than I did when he played. I feel that way about Charles Barkley too. Like, I remember Charles Barkley playing, but if you say, hey, Charles Barkley, the first thing like, the dude from TNT, it's weird. Ice Cube's like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't even think Ice Cube was a rapper no more. He was like my favorite rapper as a kid. But I think of him as an actor or something like that now. I don't even think of him as a guy who used to rap. It's weird like that. Will Smith, same way. I don't think our parents just don't understand. Think of Ali.
Yeah. Fair. For me, I'd say the person I was toying about putting on here, I already talked about Joe Montana, but I took him off altogether for the reasons I said. But for me, it was Michael Vick.
I thought you would have Michael Vick.
I wanted to put him on there. I think he was, Randall Cunningham 2.0. I think he changed the game. So he deserves an honorable mention. And players continue to just show up and do it better than Michael Vick. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, you can even say a lot of these mobile quarterbacks that are just doing it better than what he did. But he was the second of his kind to do it. I guess you could even, was Steve McNair mobile? I don't think Steve McNair was that mobile, but it was Randall, Michael Vick, and then everyone else afterwards. So
I thought Steve Young would be up there too.
Steve Young, he's solid, man. Very mobile. Like he's a mobile quarterback for sure. But Steve Young was you couldn't tackle that dude.
Yeah.
A good quarterback. So yeah, that was our top 5 favorite players of all time. Not top players of all time performing. This was strictly our personal favorite.
There was one other guy that I really wanted to put on this list, and him and Ryan Lott were the only other one that really I battled over. Brett Favre.
Brett Favre. Okay.
Because I don't think I've seen too many guys who just seem to have as much fun playing football as Brett Favre.
Yeah. The everlasting will he retire saga. He was the first one to do it, man. We never knew what he was going to do. And Aaron Rodgers seems to be following that
something
path.
in the water in Green Bay.
Right. Yeah, Brett Favre. Fun to watch. Gunslinger for sure. Always threw it out there. I feel like he was playing on the edge of insanity all the time, or the edge of just craziness. But it worked out for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure enough. All right, fellas, let's do some shout outs before we close it down. Dev, you have any shout outs?
Shout out to my daughter, man. On the 4th of July, I don't think we'll be back by then. She will be 24 years old, man. So we got I got a 50 pack of mortars. And my neighbor has a 100 pack of mortars. My other neighbor has another 50 pack. We're going to let all those packs up on the 1st. It's going to be pretty cool. So we're going to have like a block party. Probably illegal, but we're going to have one.
Yep.
Just our 3 houses combined, a couple of friends from not in the neighborhood. So we're expecting about 60, 70 people over here Saturday. We'll have fun.
Sweet.
If you're in Kentucky, guys,
come through.
Yeah, come through.
Phil, what you got?
Shout out to everyone who's going to, because as Dev said, we won't be back on before 4th of July. Shout out to everyone here in the United States of America. So I'm not going to be political or anything like that. In fact, I'm going to say the opposite. Go love your neighbor. Go enjoy the fact that, you're free to do a lot of things. If you look at some of these other countries, you can't do. And, be free to disagree, be free to be neighbors, be free to love one another and help them out when they need it. You don't have to necessarily all think. We don't have to think alike, and that's the beauty of it. We can be good, loving neighbors to each other, and so enjoy that freedom. Go enjoy some barbecue. Shoot off some fireworks. Go grill some burgers, hot dogs, all that wonderful stuff. Fly to red, white, and blue. And you know what? Take the person next door a plate.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yep.
Sorry,
I don't have any
give a
shout
brother a
out.
plate.
I echo what Phil said. Enjoy your 4th of July.
Hey man, I'm just celebrating my kid's birthday. They ain't let niggas free till later on. I ain't celebrating for it.
True story.
All right, Dad, better late than never. Better late than never.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you do.
Even after that, man, it was Jim Crow and all that shit. Hey man, I need reparations. I'll sell it for 20,000 views and follows. Just click down there on the bottom.
Regardless of what you do,
he needs 100,000 streams of his album on Spotify.
Yeah. That will happen one day.
Be safe. Enjoy yourself. Be careful. There's a lot of crazies out there. Yeah, and thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on the audio, we love you, man. And we'll continue to do more stuff like this in the off season. We're getting closer to training camp, so we'll pick up the pace as we get there. So yeah, nothing but love for you guys. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Reparations.
As always, peace.
Freedom, baby. Peace.
And hail.
Reparations.
We out of here.